In this video, I'm going to cover the one arm lock off. This position here, predominantly used in rock climbing, and oh man, I am sore. So doing that was pretty difficult. But I'm going to teach you how to be able to get into that position, a lot of the primary muscle groups that are involved, and then just some tips and tricks and a few exercises you can do to kind of isolate those areas to better train it, to be able to do it even when you're sore, like me, like I am today. And let's get into it. All right, so first things first, I want to cover the grip position you're gonna be in. That'll give you the biggest advantage to stay in that position comfortably and make it into more of a locked off exercise rather than like just trying to fight gravity. What I mean by that is properly creating the base with the use of the semi-false grip. And the semi-false grip, all that means is I am gripping onto the bar and engaging my forearm flexors. A lot of people will grab onto the bar and keep a straight wrist. So my wrist will be straight like this. And that is finger flexors, so finger tendons, and like kind of like the lower and upper portion of your tendons and muscles that involve or that flex those tendons into place. So you can hold on to a one arm lock off with an open hand like this. It's not as controlled and you wouldn't be able to use the one arm lock off to its full advantage if you're not engaging your entire forearm flexor by all. I mean, you can see my forearm engage when I pull that wrist down a little bit. So we're going from an unlocked position to a flexed, locked, semi-locked position. Locked just means fully engaged, so I'm not gonna crank like that. No way I can hold my entire body weight completely locked off like that. I'm gonna be slightly engaged, engaging that semi-false grip. And the semi-false grip, I'm not squeezing the crap out of the bar. I am using, most of the time, tape and chalk, and using the friction from that tape and chalk to squeeze just enough so I don't slide out of that position. So I'm not going like this and then hanging with that straight wrist. I am squeezing just enough to maintain that friction and maintain that forearm engagement so I can better use my forearm flexors. And what I mean by engaging the forearm flexors to their advantage is I'm pulling down like this, and then I can navigate and move my body around in specific ways that predominantly used in climbing, but it also helps translate in from unilateral strength into doing more pull-ups or more powerful pull-ups if that's what you're into. But one arm lock-offs, I've never heard of them using anything besides Ninja Warrior, which is also a byproduct of climbing, but predominantly in rock climbing. So if you're still here listening to this, you're probably a rock climber. So I'm gonna try to make this a little more biased to rock climbers. So first things first, get into that semi-false grip. I know it's uncomfortable, I know it sucks, I know it eats away at your skin and it hurts with calluses. Even though I have pretty developed calluses, you can see my hand, it still makes my fingers a little rosy, but pain is pain, and rock climbers are all masochists anyway, so we love the pain. Yeah, anyway, semi-false grip, that's your first point of contact. That is why I'm harping on that, and that is the reason I want you to stay in this position so you can better use everything else I'm about to talk about. So, semi-false grip. Moving into the other side of the forearm, we have our brachioradialis. This muscle is going to be paired with your brachialis. So brachioradialis is this long, snaky forearm muscle that goes down your forearm right here, and your brachialis sits right next to your bicep, and they are both elbow flexors, so they allow you to pull your arm and then keep it in this position for a one arm lock off. Now, your brachioradialis is very particular on how it's engaged. If I am going to try to engage it, I'm gonna need some sort of pronated grip. And on the bar, that's easy because when we do pull-ups, our hands are pronated. When we do chin-ups, so if you're doing a chin-up lock off, that's fine, but you will not be targeting your brachioradialis. This is for more of, let's say I'm facing a rock climbing wall and I want to do a lock off. My hand is going to be pronated and facing the wall that I'm on. So we do want to talk about the brachioradialis. Brachioradialis, we're going to have to engage in some form of false or pronated or semi-pronated grip. I like semi-pronated because it helps target not only the brachialis or the brachioradialis, but also the brachialis as well. So you get like kind of a 2-for-1 special. And remember, we're trying to create the most efficient ways to train possible. You don't want to spend hours and hours in the gym trying to train these muscle groups. So let's stick with a semi-pronated grip. A semi-pronated grip. This is neutral, right? Hammer position. This is fully pronated, and then this is semi-pronated. So about 45 degrees, right in between the neutral and the pronated, semi-pronated. That is going to allow you to still get good brachioradialis activation and brachialis activation, because brachialis is predominantly used in a hammer position, neutral position. Really good to train that, because I would say the brachialis is probably the number one beside your grip, because you need to have at least strong enough hands to hold onto the bar. The brachialis is the number one activated part in the one-arm lock-off, and it's huge in climbing for locking off in general, even if you have both hands on the wall. Now, semi-pronated, we're going to be here. That is how we're going to grab onto the dumbbell to do our exercise. All right, so I have a dumbbell in my hands. Check this out. I'm going to take a neutral position so I can identify the landmark of where I need to be. I'm going to cant my hand to 45 degrees. From here, you can just do regular curls. I like keeping my elbow slightly in front of my torso, or slightly in front of me the entire time, because that puts a lot more stress in the areas that I want. So I will rep this out just like this, and you'll feel it right away. The other thing too is you don't want your wrist to go into ulnar deviation, which is this position here. You want to stay as locked and neutral as possible. You don't have to do radial deviation, and like you can if you want to, which is just flexing into it, and you might need to a little bit in order to hold against the resistance of the dumbbell. But as long as your wrist isn't dropping into ulnar deviation, you should be good. So that is the only thing I would suggest looking out for, and then the elbow positioning as well. Here, semi-pronated and curl. I would use 2 dumbbells if you got them, because again, we're trying to get the most bang for our time. We don't want to spend a lot of time doing this. Now, I would go with a relative, this is all relative strength training. So, prescription for that would be 8 to 12 reps at a weight that you can do 8 to 12 reps at. I would rest for about 90 seconds, so a minute and a half, and then repeat that 3 to 4 times, depending on how you feel. And I would not do this prior to climbing, because you are going to slam these muscles, and this will just eliminate everything you have to your advantage for climbing stronger. Do this after climbing or on your rest day, where you're not trying to climb either that day or the next day. So, brachioradialis, brachialis. Now, we're going to get into the kind of below the shoulder arm, because your delt really isn't activated in this. It's more of like scapula engagement through the lats and the serratus anterior. So, this position here, where we go from below the shoulder. Below our shoulder, we actually have a little bit of pec minor in there as well, which is this right here. That's kind of a secondary muscle that I'm not going to have you do chest flies or anything like that. That's going to be activated all in this all-encompassing exercise I'm about to show you. But obviously our lats sit back here, and they are a huge factor in the one-arm lock-off, as well as doing more pull-ups in general. So we want to make sure we're feeling our lats when we're exercising them. We're not in a position where we're eliminate them because of our shoulder positioning or something like that. Usually external rotation of the shoulder, which is just moving my shoulder or my elbow towards the midline, will get your shoulder in the right position to engage your lats better. That's all going to happen because we're doing that false grip. That's why it's so important. Now, we're in that semi-false grip. We're working ourselves down the chain. We already targeted the lats. I'm going to show you an exercise that targets the lats and the serratus anterior and the oblique and the right side of the rectus abdominis, because we're doing a right side exercise right now. Obviously, this would be the reverse if we're doing it on the left side as well. So, lats. Serratus anterior, basically just think about that as your ribs the muscles that sit in between the ribs here. Pretty much that's what it is. That helps your arm come a little bit towards the midline as well, assist with that pec. And those are, again, secondary muscle groups, but the serratus anterior, in my opinion, is actually worked more in the one arm lock off than the pec minor. So pay attention to how your ribs are feeling contracted in this state. And then oblique. Oblique is probably one of the most neglected muscles, and one of the reasons you probably can't do a lot of the stuff that you have goals for in the calisthenics area or the rock climbing area. It's because they're really hard to activate. But once you get used to activating them and using them properly, they're such a good muscle to have in your toolbox that it just helps with everything else that you do. So we want to make sure our oblique, which is basically our lower side here that sits right next to our rectus abdominis, that is going to be flexing as well. And then lastly, so your six pack, your rectus abdominis, obviously I'm going to be demonstrating on the right side. I have trouble demonstrating on my left side because of this wonky wrist I have here. I can still do one arm lock-offs. It's just much more taxing on my body and on my shoulder because of the injury I have on my wrist. So right side, all those muscles are going to be involved. Now, how do we activate those muscles? We are going to get an ab strap. And I don't care if you use two. Two is probably more of a beginner style exercise. One is really going to target exactly what we want. So we got top of the position here, forearms, brachioradialis. The brachialis is kind of the connecting point between everything. And then we have the lower chain, which is what this is going to target. This is a supported position for your elbow. You want your elbow to you want to think about your elbow to your hip. That is the connection we're trying to make because that engages everything. You can just stand here and think about that position pulling down with your elbow like that, and that is what you want to feel. That is what you want to strengthen. That's why these ab straps work so well for isolating this position. This is going to be an isometric contraction, which just means we're not lengthening or shortening the muscle. We are just staying in place and contracting as hard as we can for as long as we can. Now, again, it might be very difficult for you if you're just learning how to do this if you only use one ab strap. One ab strap, since this is a unilateral exercise, which just means we're using one side rather than two, which is ideal for training because you want to train exactly how the movement is going to be simulated when you actually perform it. So we are here with our elbow all the way through. And I like putting my hand on the back side of the ab strap because it kind of counterbalances me and I can pull a little bit to it. It's more of a balancy thing than it is a strength training thing. And then I'm going to drive my elbow down to my hip as high or as low as I can. Obviously I can only go so low and my core is going to come up to my elbow. It won't come all the way up, and that's not what we're looking for. We're just looking for proper engagement. As long as you feel a contraction happening throughout this whole lower chain right here, you're doing it correctly. So from here, you can step on something or whatever, but we're going to lock off just like we would on the bar, and we're going to hold that position just like this. And just like that, you can see my core is tilted to the side a little bit, but I am engaged all the way through to my hip, through my oblique, side of my rectus abdominis, serratus anterior, pec minor, all the way down into my lat as well. This is why this is such a good exercise for the one arm lock off. And it's pretty lazy too. All you have to do is sit in the ab strap for as long as you can, or like 90% till failure, which just means have a little bit left in the tank before you fail. That way you can safely train it. And I would suggest, same thing with the strength training protocol, do 90% max effort, rest for like maybe a little longer, so like 2 minutes, so 120 seconds, quick math, and then repeat that 3 to 4 times on each side. If you have 2 ab straps, same thing, really good builder, teaches you how to engage properly. The only issue with 2 ab straps, we're sitting in it like this, and then you're not going to get the feeling of putting all your weight to one side, and you're not going to get the same engagement because once we do a unilateral exercise, so many different muscle patterns are happening that we're engaging almost an entirely different chain when we switch from one side to the other, or using 2 arms to 1 arm. It's the same reason that a lot of people can do a lot of 2-arm pull-ups, but they can't even do one 1-arm pull-up because the pull pattern is just so much different. This is also a great precursor to the one arm pull-up, being able to hold yourself in the one arm lock off position. But keeping it simple, I would do these 2 exercises. If you're feeling saucy, maybe 3 times a week, 2 times a week at minimum, if you want to get the most results in the least amount of time. And that's pretty much it. That's how I would teach somebody how to do it in the simplest way. If you don't have ab straps, find a way to create this elbow connection to your hip. And that could be a lat pull down, could be something where you put like a towel around your arm and connect it to a lat pull down and you're pulling down to that hip. If you grab onto the bar and you're just doing this connection here, so you're just getting into, even if you use 2 arms, if you're just getting into this connection, maybe ideally you wouldn't come to a full one arm, like a 90 degree. You would try to pull up and then emphasize one side. So if I'm doing my right side, I'd use 2 arms and I would pull and I would really try to emphasize all that engagement on one side if you don't have access to ab straps. But usually there's a dusty pair sitting somewhere in every climbing gym, or there should be. That's where I found mine. I've been using ab straps for like 15 years and I owe a lot of credit to being able to do the things and move my body the way I do, because I found an old dusty pair at my climbing gym so many years ago, and they've become a staple training tool in my whatever you call it, training, programming. Yeah. But yeah, if you want to do a one arm lock off and you want to hold it and you want to be strong in it, you don't just want to hold it and not being able to use that strength, because there's a lot of people who can hold a one arm lock off, but then when it comes to practical use on a climbing wall or in obstacle course training, something like that, they have the strength to do it in isolation, but when it comes to the practical application, they don't really have a lot of strength because they've been skipping a step. They haven't been engaging their forearm flexors and building it up correctly to actually use that power to be able to pull up and then reach for something. That's where you get the strength for it, and that's where you'll really reap the benefits from being able to do a one arm lock off. But I know that was a lot. 2 simple exercises. Just think about it like that. Hopefully that helps.